Welcome to My Bloody Website, the show where we talk all things online for small and medium business owners or executives who still refer to their bloody website. I'm your co-host, Darryl King.
And I'm Edmund Pelgan.
Okay, welcome to the podcast. Welcome, Ed. Good to see you. This is episode 2, and we're talking about your site must be HTTPS and why.
Now, mate, you need to tell me. The average punter is not going to know what the heck is HTTPS. I still have this conversation today. And I say HTTPS and they say, what's that? And I say secure search. Do you know what that is? So why don't you explain it to me? Why? What is it?
Okay. And I got to be careful we don't go too technical because we don't want to. And the easiest way I explain it to people is when you go to a website and there's a little green padlock up in the top of your browser or whatever color padlock it might be for what browser you use, you know that the site's secure and you trust it. And it's secure if it's done properly using a secure socket layer or a security certificate, an SSL certificate that is installed for your website. And that's uses the HTTPS protocol. So websites used to be HTTP. Now there's an S on the end of them. And that indicates that it's secure if it's done correctly. So if you see the padlock, if it says the word secure, then we know that the site is secure. So that's the basic terms of what it is.
Now,
it's a certificate.
I actually said that to someone and they said, well, what does that mean? And so
Okay.
what does that actually mean?
So,
when it's not secure?
Okay, so the data okay, let's step back and do a 101 website kind of basic thing. So when you visit a website and you interact with the website, between your computer and where the website lives on the hosted server, there is a transmission of data, right? That things go around. So data could be an image, the logo on the website, and that image is sent to you and it's broken up into things called packets. And there's all sorts of stuff about it. So that it's very clever. The browser that you're looking in or the device that you're looking on knows that it should receive this. It's broken up into little packets and it recompiles them again so that everything looks right when it gets to your machine. That's done or was done for many years over HTTP, which is general protocol. Now, the data that's being transmitted is wide open. It's not encrypted. It's visible. Now, does that really matter? Well, on my webpage where I wax on about we're a wonderful service provider and we do this, we do that. No, it doesn't really matter whether that's secure or not. Where it matters, of course, and where it always mattered, was when you were selling stuff. Okay, so
like an e-commerce.
if I'm selling, an e-commerce shop, because when I put in my credit card data, right, then I don't want that being transmitted as all the numbers and my expiry date, because then someone could see that. So if it's sent over HTTP, if it's not secure, that data is technically visible. Now, not to the average person. I can't see it. It's going through the ether. But if someone was able to hack into that data stream between you and that connection, and we won't talk about how they might do that, but it's very possible they can do it, they can then take that data out and they can see it and it's in plain text. So what HTTPS does is it allows an encrypted connection between the destination and the sender. So that data is now encrypted in a method that in theory can't be seen. And so the secure certificate at the website end and is recognized by the browser, and the two things share that data now encrypted, so I can't see it. So if I was sending the 16-digit credit card number, it's all now obfuscated and encrypted, and I can't see it.
All right.
And that's what the certificate was doing. So that's why it might exist. Now, why do we? It's a different question. I guess, Ed, maybe you could talk about. Well, why has this become such a big thing? Previously, why has it become?
Because
like it was used on e-commerce shops. Why is it a big deal now? Why is it all suddenly topical?
Yeah, because up until recently, right, most e-commerce, in fact, all e-commerce websites using shopping carts had to have HTTPS on the shopping cart page, correct? And
well, they should have had. They should have had. They didn't all do it, but they should have had. Yeah.
So that's the big issue. Like right now, every FCO and every marketer is telling everyone you've got to upgrade the websites to HTTPS. Now, the reason
why are they saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's akin to using the big stick approach. And the reason is because Google is the biggest access point for the internet out there. And they've been very aggressively pushing security as one of their key issues. And recently they moved their own search engine to HTTPS, and so that they took away the keyword data that us good old SEOs used to get in analytics. But the big issue is primarily around security. They want to secure the web. They want people to have secure websites.
Okay.
And yeah,
and
so,
maybe we're not going to go down to all the layer of why they want to do that and whether
yeah,
it's good or bad or whatever. But I mean, they are forcing people to.
yeah,
I mean,
and,
we get a bit sick. It's because people weren't adopting stuff to make the web a safer place.
correct.
Right.
And Google is in a position to apply pressure because of two things. One, they own Google, the search engine, right? And so they started telling people that a ranking factor or, a contributory ranking factor in ranking well and doing well online was the fact that your site was secure. And the second thing is they own bloody Chrome, right? One of the probably the most popular browser out there. I mean, Darryl, why don't you talk about...
Well, and Android, right? Android devices. So,
Absolutely.
they've got a massive footprint across consumer use of online.
Yeah. And so what they've been doing now is that they've recently updated Chrome so that a site that's not HTTPS or pages where there are forms that aren't on HTTPS start sending up these little flags in the browser. And you've seen them more aggressively when a browser will pop up and say, this site is, hacked, move back. You've seen those, right? No one clicks through to those. And in this way, that little message, right, is starting to get a little bit more aggressive. And who knows? Google could say to Chrome tomorrow, every single site that's not HTTPS, flash up a big red warning telling people it's not secure. Can you imagine what that'll do to the site traffic?
Well, and I think this is the thing. You talked about forms. So, part of what's happened is that, okay, most people had adopted it for payment. But the view is, well, yeah, okay, but what about login forms? So WordPress is an example. Now, you always had an option in WordPress to force HTTPS for the admin area redirect. But people didn't, and WordPress is unarguably the largest content management system in the world by a long shot. So millions, hundreds of millions of sites are using WordPress. And we're seeing lots of sites getting hacked, being hacked. And it's not all directly through a website. Sometimes, the computer gets infected and they've got FTP details or login. But because there are forms like admin forms for content management systems, there are contact inquiry forms. And, people are being more sophisticated and aggressive, pushing forms everywhere. Newsletter sign-up forms, whether you're using MailChimp or somewhere like that. All of these elements are asking for data. And while it might not be payment data, if I can get your name and your email address and maybe you ask for a birth date because you're a doctor registration form, if that's not secure and that data is intercepted, then obviously people can use that data against you and in their hacking attempts and other attempts to steal your identity. So they are, I think that's the thing. You talked about its form. So that's why now it's not just saying, well, your e-commerce shop is secure, we'll let you get away with it. Kind of going, rather than having to worry about every element on a page and tell, blah, 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 or you say, you don't want people going in and out of HTTPS and non-HTTPS.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe we should raise something else technical too. It used to be problematic and load intensive to run HTTPS. So that's another reason why people didn't do it. If I run my whole site under HTTPS, the overhead on the server, and a lot of people are on shared servers, was higher. So my site performance went down. So there was kind of this double-edged sword. If my speed is down and people like Google are saying, well, that's a ranking factor. That's something we want faster sites. And because everything's going mobile, it makes sense. But then I add an HTTPS layer and then, there's more processing time because, it's doing harder work. It's slowing it down. We are kind of cancelling each other out. But when there was updates to the protocols and everything now, those arguments have long gone away. They're not needed. And then the other part was there's a cost. People charge money for secure certificates, and we'll talk about that a little bit later maybe, but that doesn't exist now. We'll talk about it now.
Well, I think we should talk about it now because we basically touched on the point why you need to move to HTTPS, right? So that's not an issue for discussion anymore. My question is, and I know this because I'm still confused by it, and I'm guaranteed the average business owner looks at this and goes, "What the hell are they talking about? What type of SSL certificate do I need? There are free, there are paid, there are $5,000 SSLs. What the hell is the difference?"
Well, before I answer that question, why don't we say one thing? We've talked about it and we've said that you should do it, but we should emphatically say to people, if your site is not on HTTPS now, don't even think about it. You should do it. absolutely go into it.
Absolutely.
So the actionable tip today is, if your site is not HTTPS, you need to rapidly make it HTTPS, and you need to talk to your providers and just make that happen. So that's, I think, and we'll say that again at the end. Don't debate it. If you don't know why, go to your site and do it. Now, we'll talk about technical stuff. So SSL certificates for the average business are not a big deal, right? And you've always been able to get quick SSLs and simple SSLs and all those sorts of things. But and then there were more expensive ones. And there's things like wildcard SSLs. So wildcard SSL is that any subdomain from my root domain is covered. So if I have www.my website and I have members. and shop. I can buy one certificate and it will cover them all. Most people don't need that. But most people, and the higher level verified ones. So if you go to your bank, if you go to someone like National Australia Bank, or you go to Wells Fargo, you'll actually see up in the browser that actually next to the secure part has their name. And that's a verified certificate where their identity has been verified properly. So to do that, it's much more expensive, and you have to submit all sorts of corporate documentations and verifies that you are the person. Now, 99% of people probably don't need a verified certificate, so they don't need to pay for the certificate. They don't need to go through that process. And so then you come back to, okay, well, if I don't need verified, we're really comparing lower cost certificates through trusted people and free certificates. Now, free certificates have only been around properly in a trusted sense for a couple of years. And the biggest one in that space really is called Let's Encrypt, which has been... Yeah.
Why are they free? How are these guys giving them away for free?
Well, technically, there was no reason to charge for them, right? Because they are just well, really what it comes back to is that you need trust in the relationship, right? So for the certificate to build trust, they have to come from a trusted provider. Now, there's a bit of irony that one of the companies that owns a lot of the root certificates actually got hacked massively. There was a problem in there, but that's a different story. So that broke down some of the trust. But you need trust. So they were paid for because people, it was hard to generate the trust. So we were a top provider, not me personally, but this company would be a VeriSign or something like that, and they would have root certificates, and then they could issue certificates based off that, and people could trust it. So your operating system browser knew that you could trust that certificate was valid. Otherwise, because to be technical, you can set up a secure certificate on a server like that. The protocol exists. You can say, oh, this server is running HTTPS. So the protocol, which encrypts everything, runs. But I don't know that it's trusted because there's no certificate.
Sure.
So you get the certificate to create the trust. And people owned that trust. It's like when you go to the bank, right? I could store your money for you. Give it to me and I'll pay you interest. Look, I'll just bring it, put it in my letterbox, and I'll look after it. Well, you don't really trust that because I'm just going to run off with it. Well, you might not. But that's the same thing. We go to banks because we trust they'll look after our money, they'll be able to pay it back, and et cetera, et cetera. So the certificates kind of work that way. So you trust this place, you buy it. But then people went, well, if we want to make the web secure and we want to remove the biggest factor, and plus the world has accepted open source, the concept of open source. WordPress is free. Lots of things are free. Drupal's free. Like all of these open source technologies, Linux is free. All of these things are free. So basically, Let's Encrypt was set up to provide free. Now, they're not the only free SSL provider, but they're backed by people like Google, Microsoft, and people like that to create the trust inherently and set up a foundation that runs it. So it's a not-for-profit in theory that runs these, and that we can all trust. And they do it a little bit differently.
Can someone who's running a decent-sized e-commerce business use a free SSL from Let's Encrypt?
Yeah, there's no reason they can't at all.
Okay, all right.
They're a secure certificate and they're trusted certificates.
So for pretty much.
Yeah, I like that. Well, they auto-renew every 90 days. So typically when you buy a certificate, the minimum quantity is a year, but you can buy multiple years when you buy them. The issue is if you go out of business or you change things, you've got a year's worth of certificate per se. Yep. Things change. The period is a year or 2 years. That's a trusted certificate. So if someone was able to get hold of it and use it nefariously, that you're not necessarily protect that. So these are good. They'll do it all, but they don't. The basic ones don't provide that higher level verification.
All right.
They're perfectly secure and safe.
So my next question is, if I'm a business owner and I don't have a site on HTTPS, what do I do? What are the steps? Who do I talk to? What's the process?
Okay. So you probably want to have, the important thing in our show, Ed, is we want to make sure that, and that's why there's two of us. We come from different sides, right? There's different people involved in this process. So for getting your SSL sorted, you want to talk to your hosting company and your web gal. I said web guy exclusively last time. It could be a web gal.
That's
right?
good.
Web guy, web gal. Who's looking after your website? Now, that might be someone internal, or it might be an agency or freelancer. Both people need to know. Now, there's a third person as well. Really important person. Yeah. your SEO particularly.
Absolutely.
And people make the mistake. So fundamentally, we're changing the URL. And people, it's just the HTTPS. But it is a change of URL. And it's no different to taking the www off your site and going without. It's a fundamental change of the URL that your site runs on. So you have to do it properly.
Yeah, and the analogy, it's like changing your address and not redirecting your mail, right?
Yeah. Now, most servers will automatically handle the redirect probably for you. But so you want to talk to those people. Now, at a server level, at your hosting level, they need to install the certificate. If you're on any hosting company and using cPanel, for example, that offers free, and let's make a note about the free and pay. There are a lot of large hosting companies not offering free SSL at the moment. Hat tip to you. I had a hosting company which I sold a year ago, but 2 years ago we put Let's Encrypt in when we were happy with it, because why not? Now, I could understand if you're a daddy site or something like that, or whoever it is that doesn't want to offer them. You might have 800,000 people that pay you even for a quick SSL, and maybe you charge them $100 a year. Well, that's a fair bit of coin that they're going to give up. So that, from a shareholder perspective, they don't necessarily want you to turn the tap off. But the reality is there are plenty of great hosting companies that offer it. So if your host doesn't offer it, don't immediately pay. Talk to your team about moving, because these days, if you're in cPanel, new hosting company can do a cPanel to cPanel move for you easily.
Can the web developer handle this for them? Because the reality is, like, you're asking a business owner to talk to the hosting company, talk to the web. A good web developer.
Well, the web developer could. But things you need to look at. The business owners or whoever's the nominated person in the business should be taking more responsibility for this asset. And I think we've got an episode coming up about digital assets and taking ownership of them. So we might leave that till then. But someone's got to know enough to do this, not just abrogate responsibility to your web guy or gal. But yes, what you need to know is we need to get our hosting changed. At the hosting level, we want it installed. Then the next part is you want to have site-wide redirects put in place from non-HTTPS to HTTPS. So what that means, or maybe you can talk about that, but if I've got a bookmarked link, or I find you on Google and it goes to your /about page, that was previously HTTP : domain name, and that now will redirect to the HTTPS version automatically, including the about, or whatever the URL was on the end, the path. So we want that done. So we want to install a certificate. So we've got a certificate, and we want global redirects done, including retaining the path, everything.
Yep.
That's what most people do. There's a step that's not always done, often not done. And this is something you need to talk to your web developers about. The web developers might not be, some won't be the people to do this, some will. So there's a different degree. Some are more graphic design orientated that can do greater implementations in a content management system, but they're not necessarily great with the more technical plugins and data. One of the big things, a lot of content management systems hard store URLs. So WordPress is bad at this in that it will store the full URL. So if you've got a link to a page or something within your site, it will have stored HTTP : / in there. So if you don't do any more, your site is continually redirecting those old links to the new ones.
Correct.
Internally, and so it adds little hops into the process. And ideally, we want to take them out. So what you need to get someone to do is to do a database fix. Now, you don't want to go through your site and manually go to PHPMyAdmin and edit the menu. No. So there are scripts that can do this. They're very aggressive. They're dangerous to run on a live production website.
Yep.
And you need someone that can do them. But your hosting company might be able to help. Your web developer might be experienced enough to do it. There are other plugins you can install into your content management system, and different systems have different things. But the third part of it is that you need to get your database references checked and changed to HTTPS to make your site perform.
So
that's a step a lot of people don't do.
Yeah. So I'm going to need someone with a little bit of technical now, someone like yourself, just to run their eye over it, check the database, make sure that's all working, and possibly an SEO to check that those redirects, those permanent redirects. So
that's step 4. That's step 4, right? Is now I've got to check it. I want to run a crawler, and you can talk a little bit about how would you go about that. What's a tool that someone could use to check those steps?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a free tool out there?
Yeah, well, off the top of my head, your SEO guy or gal is going to use a tool like Screaming Frog, but there are no doubt a number of other free crawlers that probably don't provide the level of complexity. None of them come to mind for the moment, but this is the kind of thing that I would get an SEO consultant to do. And you get them involved before you make the actual implementation, so that they can compile all of the old URLs, they run it through these tools, and it just makes sure that they're redirecting to the new one. Your mail is being redirected correctly. And the key thing here is to make sure that it's called what's a 301, meaning a permanent redirect. That's the terminology. And why that's important is because it tells Google, hey, the old URL, the HTTP one, that's gone now, and it's being permanently replaced by the HTTPS version. And so what Google will do, it will drop out of the index, the old version, and replace it with the new one. And that's what you want. And Darryl's point about keeping those redirections in place on the site, don't forget, all of your old links, they point to the old version of your website. So there's a bit of cleanup afterwards too, right? To think about all those directory listings that I've got pointing to the old site. I've got to go and clean them up ultimately and point them to the new HTTPS version as well. Darryl, can I ask you one question? What if I've upgraded my site, I've moved it to HTTPS, but I've got graphics or links to third-party sites that are not on HTTP?
Okay. Well, it's a good, and maybe I should have talked about why you need to do the database cleanup, because so what will happen is when you go HTTPS in your browser, and I'll use Chrome as an example because that's where I spend most of my life. When you go there, where it should say secure, instead of having the green padlock and the word secure, it has a little I in a circle. It's grey, and it's basically it says insecure, right? Or says, and if you click on that, it says this site is not necessarily secure. So that's how they're handling it at the moment. And generally that comes from what's called mixed content. So, and you will see that before you've done the database cleanup. But like you said, you can also get it from referencing third-party sites. So what that means is I've got a logo embedded on my page, and it might be an affiliate badge or a badge to some association. So you, instead of downloading the graphic, loading it up to your site, and then putting a link in, you might have embedded something from them, like possibly an iframe, or some code. They gave you HTML code to paste. So you just paste it in there, some JavaScript. But in there, the link says HTTP to them. So what the browser is telling you is that the page is not 100% secure. Now, you could live with that. You could say, well, there's nothing insecure really. And I found an example. I was cleaning up a site the other week where the destination site did not have HTTPS version. So there were 6, it was a typical sidebar on a blog.
Yep.
Out of the 6, 5 had an HTTPS version. So I clicked the link in a new tab to the site, and then I just put in the S on the end to see if it also rendered on their site. And it did. Most of them actually redirected it automatically, but not all of them. I should send them an email. But there was one that did not have an HTTPS version. So the way I handled that was I downloaded the graphic, I went to the sidebar widget, and I went in there and I attached the internal graphic now on my website, or this client's website, which was now HTTPS because it was local. And then the link out can be non-HTTPS. The link doesn't matter. It's if you're bringing in any assets from another site. So, and those assets could be a JavaScript file. So if you're embedding Google Analytics, it will be HTTPS. But sites like that where you bring them in. So if you were using a piece of software that's doing A/B testing for you, and you had the code there for forever, it might be HTTP. Now the site will show up that way. If you're embedding a graphic off a third-party site. Now we should say when we talk about speed, performance, and that, it's best that you don't do that. You bring them all local anyway, so you can control the speed. But those things are pretty common, particularly if you've had a blog or a site up for 2 or 3 years. Of more than that, you would have old links.
I've seen something similar with it in the allied health space. There are sites that have these little book now buttons, and they use third-party websites to handle the online bookings. And some of these systems haven't moved to HTTPS yet. So the client site's HTTPS, but they've got this big book now button that's linking to a non-HTTPS asset. So, they're not getting the full 100%, hey, this is secure,
Okay, well, yeah, and it's pretty common. Well, and to round it up, right, don't feel bad if you're not there yet. Because you know what? We have a buddy in the industry that's done a big report about major e-commerce retailers, and 48% of them had gone HTTPS. This warning's been out for several years. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But here's the thing. You got to go do it. Let's be emphatic. Get your site HTTPS. Get your people involved. If you've got any questions, send them through. We are going to be doing Q&A sessions along the way, like we'll do episodes,
Absolutely.
it. We'll try and respond. We are going to be setting up a Facebook group, page, not group, a page for people that might have questions or things that we could talk about, redirect them to people. But talk to your SEO consultant, talk to your web guy or girl, talk to your hosting company. Don't always take verbatim what they say. Get the basic information. Does it make sense? Then get the implementation done, and then test it.
Absolutely. And what we might do in the notes too, I know there's a great HTTP to HTTPS migration checklist by an international SEO called Alita Solus. It's really comprehensive. It's a downloadable spreadsheet. You can give that to your SEO person, or at least, step them through it. But it's very comprehensive, and it'll help you make sure you've covered the bases in this process when you get to it.
And I'll give a warning, right? I have seen messages from hosting companies that don't want to give free actually tell their client that they're not safe and secure. You shouldn't do it, and there's no need to do it. Right?
Oh, that's just bad info.
Well, it's bad info. The fact of the matter is, it's about trust signals. And there's a book up on my shelf from a guy called BJ Fogg from about 18 years ago that talks about persuasive technology. It's about trust signals. And the thing there is, the question's really easily answered. When your potential customers or your existing customers come to your website for any reason, would it be good or bad for your business to say this site is insecure at the top? You answer that question. If you're happy for it to say my site's insecure and that you think people will still trust you, don't take our advice. But if you think that doesn't make sense, if you think it's okay to go home at night and leave your shop or office door unlocked and wide open that anyone can get in, that's fine. You probably won't want to listen to any more episodes of us. But if you wanted to take the advice, don't believe them, move away from that hosting company or that SEO or that web guy or gal, if that's the advice they give you, because it's actually wrong. Don't listen. Change your site to HTTPS. It shouldn't cost you very much at all. Go do it, and you'll be better for it in the long run.
Mate, is that today's tip?
I'm done ranting.
Make the move. Mate, I think that was very comprehensive. I think that is it for today. If you want to be notified when the next episode goes live, please sign up to the website, mybloodywebsitepodcast.com, or subscribe to us on iTunes. And as I say every week, if you enjoyed this information, if it was helpful, we'd appreciate it if you would leave us an iTunes review, because it helps people find us. Once again, we'll see you next week let's try that again. We'll see you next week when we continue this chat about My Bloody Website. It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.